So we're going to discuss, and um, we're going to try not to have Matthew talk first. We're going to try and get hear how things went when you tried the exercises. So I'm going to read the first one. The first is to find the silence that underlies all sounds, and that was obviously relevant to the meditation we just went through. When you are in some busy, noisy spot, find a place to sit. Close your eyes and listen to the noise. Then listen to the silence that underlies all sounds. Let the sounds roll by as you listen to silence. So I love this exercise. Um, I have a friend who sent me an email. He's been on a couple of these Zooms over the years, um, and he wrote to me. He's in his 80s, and he wrote to me. So he's been a Zen practitioner for 60 years, and he said that his Zen teacher, when he was dying, his final teaching was listen to the silence. So that again just put that exclamation point after this. Um, and I'll just say that I've done this many times. Um, and what I liked about your meditation, Matthew, is you're including thoughts as sounds. And when I practice, I listen to sounds, and finding the silence underneath sounds was one thing, but finding the silence underneath thoughts was a deeper thing. Um, so uh, that is my brief comment on this exercise. Um, and I'm hoping that everyone has some comment that they can make, which will give Matthew food for his own comments. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you did not do the exercises, and then I will not call on you. Who wants to be brave and admit you didn't do the exercise? Jessica, my own sister. Teddy, Dan. Oh my.
I did the last one, but I didn't do but I thought about them all. But yeah, my sorry, Bruce. But
I asked ChatGPT.
What did ChatGPT say?
I'm just kidding. I actually didn't do it, period.
All right. Well, for the someone who did, what would you and that's a little disappointing to me because this is, these Zooms are really benefit by involvement and engagement. So we put effort into this, and I'm
I,
not
I
trying to.
I will say you just did the exercise. The meditation was the exercise. So you could comment on that even.
Who would like to say something?
I will. I
Good.
do. So yeah, I didn't do the exercises before this, but and I loved what we just did. But there's a way in which I feel like I work with the exercises every day because I know I've shared this before. Um, when I did Vipassana some years ago, that was a place that really changed my life, my own relationship with silence. And so when I get into bed at night, I'm just so I love my life with my husband and the people that I get to interact with work and the different ways I get to do that. But I'm just so glad to get into bed and listen to the silence. There's something just really nurturing. And I never really had an awareness of it before. Vipassana, you're silent for 10 days and you gain a different relationship with it. But then I loved also this idea of listening to the silence separate from the noises around us. And when this tonight's meditation, I think because we're near the ocean, even though it's the windows are closed, I found myself kind of tuning into the subtle sound of that. But over Thanksgiving, we had some family here that stayed up late and were chatting, and I'd had that experience of, oh boy, I could hear people, I couldn't hear what they were saying, but they were chatting in our living room and noticing the sound being distracting, and then sort of choosing to turn my attention away from it, from this sound, the background of it, and just sink into the silence. And I have tinnitus in my ears. So that's its own separate relationship and distraction. But it's almost, I've had to make friends with that too. And so I think I'm very much aware of like being able to like notice background noise and go, oh, but I'm just going to stay with this inner silence that I find comforting. So I'm curious what's happening for other people with it. So thanks.
Well, for me, I will admit that it's the only exercise I did of them all. Um, and I did it briefly. Um, I got your email and I was sitting in my office. I work in what's called the Jakewood Building on the University of Oregon campus. And so I was in my office, and it's right on the corner where traffic comes in to the university. It's front entrance. It's a building right there. And I have a corner office, so I see a lot of activity all the time. And it didn't take long to experience something really quite peaceful. Um, so it was a really lovely exercise I'd never done before, although I've done so much meditation, it was pretty easy to slip into it in some sense. And I just experienced a unity. I experienced kind of I felt I got a glimpse of an underlying platform on which things were being created in front of me. And it was a lovely moment. And I just felt the unity of everything, like the oneness of everything coming out of the platform.
Nice, David. Leslie, I think you have your hand up.
Thanks, Bruce. So for me, when I'm given an assignment, I go right into, I got to get this right. I got to do it right. And then sometimes I miss the lesson in it because I'm trying to I'm in my personality and my wanting to be good, do good, and do the right thing. I also tried to pick times to do the exercise when I was really wound up, or I was at Xfinity Comcast today trying to deal with my phone. So I was there and I thought, if I could practice finding calm in the chaos of those moments, that would be really beneficial for me. Some of the things that I noted was I was rethinking of myself not being in the center of it. So that other things like from physical to emotional states could start to get better as well. I also notice that when I'm practicing that calm, I lose my engine of motivation without my anxious energy. So those are just my thoughts.
Thank you, Leslie. That's interesting. Mark, I think maybe your hand is up.
Can I ask
It
one?
is,
Can I-
but Barry's was up first, and I'm reticent to overspeak anybody because I tend to do that. So I'm going to let Barry go first.
No, I didn't have my hand up. I had my thumb up to affirm what Leslie was saying.
Can I ask you a question, Leslie?
Please.
I was just interested in what you said at the end there about your anxious energy and whether you meant that that anxiousness dissipates or dissolves. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, when I find that I get myself in a calm state, I don't even know if that makes sense, that I realize how much I am motivated and I'm run by that nervous energy, that anxiety. And so what am I without that?
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
So I'll go now, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't even see the email until late, so I did a couple of the exercises, but I didn't do them as much as I would have if I was preparing for the group like normal. What this brings up for me, and I think it's very, very valuable, is that what I find makes me feel not still or not quiet is when I resist what's going on. It's not the stuff that's going on. It's like somehow I don't like it, or I think it shouldn't be there. Or I want it to be more not there or something. And so it's a really good exercise because in a certain kind of way, it shows me where I'm resisting, even though I don't know I'm resisting. It's just like a sort of a, like there's a thought in the back of my head that it should be a certain way. And so I'm resisting, but I'm not aware of the thought until the resistance starts to kick in. I'm like, oh, I'm doing it again. It's amazing how much I need those reminders. Speaking of reminders, and some of you will read this. I did a write-up from Matthew's last retreat, the CSS retreat in October, I guess it was. And some of what was in that had been brewing in me for a while, and then the retreat brought up all this stuff, and so I started to write it down for the retreat to sort of like share at the end. And then when they said, well, send in something to, we're often encouraged to share some insights or whatever we had after retreat. So I had this unfinished paper that I'd written, and I just kept going back to it. And the reason I'm saying this is because I know before in a discussion I wasn't part of, the topic had come up like, well, how do you lose your insight? Or how does it that something comes up and then you find yourself back, like not remembering what you just learned or something like that. And this paper being on the back burner, waiting for me to fucking finish it, I kept going back to it, like, oh yeah. Like I had all these like really, I thought they were good insights. We'll see if people read it if they think they're good. But one of the things I wrote in that, I just want to share. It's a brief thing that relates to this as well. Years ago in a retreat with Joel, and the people who are part of CSS will, I guess, have a chance to read this. He was going through what he usually does on retreat. Is he'll ask people, find yourself, like where is it, or what are its qualities, or how does it seem, like try and identify something about the location or the qualities of the self, which of course is really impossible to do. And after that session, I went up to him, I said, Joel, I think the self is magnetic. And he looked at me, and he doesn't remember this conversation, so I'm going off from memory here, and I'm pretty sure I got what he said, but I might be wrong about this. But what he said is, yes, you're right. It is magnetic, but it's better to look at it as reflective. And at the time, I was really moved by what he said, and essentially what that meant, and you'll see why I'm bringing this up now, is that you can't bring something towards you by pulling, by wanting it, like silence or something. You can't make silence happen. What you can do is be quiet, and silence will approach because it'll be attracted to you because you're being like it. That's the way to make stuff. You're the mirror. It's not mirroring. You're the mirror, and you have to mirror kind of like what you want by being it, not by wanting it. So I'm saying that because I know this may be too long a way to say it, is that all this talk about quiet or stillness or spaciousness, all of it comes down to me to like thinking about or having thoughts arise that aren't, not only are they not part of the direct perception, but they're in the way. And so this meme that I got from Joel's like, don't try to, the whole, incidentally, the whole theme of my paper was about doing or not doing. That was the whole insight I got from the retreat. It can't be done. All we can do is try, bad word, to somehow embrace or be that thing and then it'll come to us. It will come to us because we're being it, not because we're pulling it or trying to do something. So when I do an exercise like this, that's what's coming up for me, because this is all the stuff that's up since, October, where I'm just seeing how thoughts, mostly unconscious thoughts, are getting in the way of everything. It's not even conscious thoughts as in the way as those are. It's the unconscious stuff. It's like I don't even realize I'm doing it until the resistance comes up. It's like, why am I resisting? Like, I'm not, there's nothing happening that makes me resist, and yet I am. So my final comment about spaciousness and all these kinds of things is noticing that which I'm unconscious of. That's what I got.
Thank you, Mark. I think you gave a lot of good stuff for Matthew to work with later on.
Well, that's really the only reason I say anything anyway, isn't it, Matt?
Larry, I think your hand is next, and then Jess.
So I didn't do the homework. I'm bad at that kind of thing, but I did do this exercise tonight when we were meditating, and my experience was of like being out in space, and there was space was filled with thousands of little bubbles, and in between the bubbles was silence. And so Matthew's voice was one of the bubbles. I chose not to pay attention to Matthew's voice because that was a bubble. I wanted to bounce in between the bubbles. Thoughts were another bubble that sometimes grabbed me, but most of the time I could stay in the space between the bubbles. Thanks.
Larry, thank you. That was beautiful. I love that image. Um, the space between the bubbles. Jessica.
Yeah, well, let's see. I was thinking back on a time where there was a lot of noise recently, and I was out helping lead some environmental education for some kind of alternative youth, the high school program. So we were playing a game outside where they were birds and looking for insects on the ground, and they were making all this noise and screaming and wrestling, and it was like really fun, but a lot of noise. And I kind of just sat there and I was saying, I just felt such an appreciation for these beings. They were so, they're old, but they're young. Just their energy. I kind of really felt a connection. And so it was neat. I didn't have to, they were all safe and everything, but I just really felt more connected to them than I think because I really slowed down and just kind of just allowed it to be.
Thank you, Jess. Uh, that might be more relevant for the next exercise, the movement one. But yes, that stillness and observing and just being present. That's great. So, Clara, welcome. We are talking about our experiences with the first exercise, noticing silence. So, I'm not going to call on you, but if you had any experience or thoughts about your experimenting with it, just, raise your hand or just start talking.
Thank you,
Anybody else
Bruce.
have? Yes. Oh, Dennis, you got your hand up.
Yes, I think, wasn't there somebody before me?
Nope, that was my sister. She's finished.
Okay. So, I've thought about this, this session quite a bit, and because it's relevant to the last, 1 or 2 years of my studies, and silence and emptiness, to me, they get to be basically indistinguishable from one another. It's just one kind of isness type state. And so, in answers to the question in the email, yes, I can get into that zone if I'm able to step back and calm down and relax and think about that. I can generally probably get myself into that zone pretty much almost always. but like I've told Matt, when I have to deal with issues related to my life, like my business, or like today, I had to go and put an eviction notice on one of my tenants' doors, and then race all the way back here for about an hour to get here in time for the meeting and stuff. When I'm doing that kind of thing, when I'm completely immersed in the illusion of duality, then it's just like I'm living my old life again. So I vacillate between the illusion of duality and the oneness or the isness of all. And it's a frustrating place to be in, but I don't know, roughly 1/3 to half the time I'm in more or less a constant ongoing meditative state of oneness.
Dennis, that's wonderful. So I think what I pull from that is you know that when you say that isness state um, is always there uh, underlying, but that sometimes the chaos of life uh, overrides it.
Yes, or demands my attention.
Yeah. Liz, go for it.
I can't find the raise your hand on an iPad. Anyway, lately I've been having more trouble finding the silence and the stillness in sitting meditation. It's kind of like it's slipped away compared to how I used to be able to find it. But when I was doing this exercise, I had a lot more success with noisy situations. Um, I would be like driving in the car at everything that's going on all around me, or in the store and everybody that's shopping and all that activity that's going on. And it wasn't stillness that I was seeing underneath. It was more of a feeling. It was more of a sense of, yes, I got a sense of something underneath all this movement and voices and scenery. What I had to put a word to it, it probably would be love. It felt more like love than silence.
No, that's a great thing to find under everything.
Yeah, I felt good with it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So I know that I just wanted to share two lines. So if you're part of a liturgical Christian church, which we go to sometimes, anyway, this is the season of Advent, which is like waiting and watching. And so I got to read the lesson this last Sunday, and it's like I heard these words for the first time. And my words were that I read, you know what time it is? Now is the moment for you to wake from sleep.
Well, that's what we all hope for, isn't it?
Amen.
Anybody else have anything to say? Or anybody who's spoken think of something else to say?
I can share something.
Good.
I resonated with a couple of folks' reports, and my experience has been of less silence than stillness, and it's mostly being able to still the talk, the inner talk, the inner distractions. But this also reminded me of a voice group a vocal group that I was in once, and the teacher really, really made a point about that first note needed to come out of silence. So he'd wait. He'd wait and he'd wait. And it became this heavy, he's waiting for somebody to stop mumbling to their neighbor. And it was really a poignant. I mean, once we got that, it was really powerful out of silence.
I love that, Mona.
Yeah. That was all.
So we had stillness as the second exercise, finding stillness. And a question rather just to think about is when you find stillness, or when I find stillness, it's a stillness of self also. When there's a stillness of self, there's no self. So who's the doer when there's no self? Dennis.
I don't think there is a doer. When there is no self, there's simply the awareness of suchness, and whatever is happening is the perfect happening playing out. There's no rhyme or reason behind it. It's simply that, and suchness or isness.
I knew I should call on you. Thank you. Anyone else have thoughts on stillness?
I visualized my thoughts in my body, like there's this foreground of all the thoughts, everything going on, and then there's this background of kind of the big ocean or the big sky and the space. I love that you said about the water, Matthew, and the little drop being part of the ocean. So for me, the stillness is when I can kind of lean back or relax back or just be more part of that the background, the bigger space that holds everything.
Yeah. I like the image, leaning back, or for me, it's leaning into it. Just lean into the stillness or the silence. Anybody else before we move to Matthew? I'm not going to call on people. So if you have courage, speak. Let there be words, sounds, movement.
I'll add one more thing. I had my eyes dilated today. So I did do number 3 where I was just sitting out in nature, but everything was like so bright and glowing and rings. And I just kind of thought, there's so much vibrations and things that I don't see that go on. And I think tonight's a super moon. I don't know if anybody saw the beautiful moon. But when I was out just experiencing this different sensation, I kind of thought, wow, that's maybe like that's like sound waves and stillness waves, and I don't know, it was gave me an altered sense of perception and kind of slowing down and taking it in.
Mm.
Stillness waves, I like that. That's great.
All right, Matthew, maybe before do you have any questions for people?
No, I wasn't thinking of questions. It's kind of jotting down some things, or maybe there'll be questions. But the first thing I'd like to kind of just point out about the answers is that a few people gave the quality that they found behind the sound a different name, like stillness or love or and so on. And I just want to point that out because, of course, this is exactly what these exercises are trying to show, is that there are these different approaches that are getting at the kind of root duality, if you will, of something and nothing. So, for example, with sound, you listen to the sounds, and then you notice behind that is the silence. Without the background, without the silence, there wouldn't be any sound. If there were, this is easier to understand with color, for example. If you're looking at the world and there's no contrast, right? If everything is blue, of the same shade, you wouldn't see anything. And so without that contrast between the silence and the sound, you wouldn't perceive anything. So in a way, it's the contrast that you're perceiving. You know, if all there was a tone, you wouldn't perceive anything. Or if all there was silence, you wouldn't perceive anything. So, and then likewise with the visual field, often the exercise is getting you to realize the emptiness behind the scenes, behind whatever it is that you're looking at. So all of these various aspects, stillness, emptiness, silence, they're all the same. And when you start realizing sort of characteristics of it, or what is that like, for example, like it's loving, or it's magnetic, or reflective. Again, it's talking about the same background, the background of everything. And you see this in the mystical teachings, you know, that it's often likened to the screen behind a movie, for example. What is that? What is it upon which all the phenomena that we perceive exists? In what does it appear? Like the phenomena are the foreground. What is the background? And that's the main direction of the spiritual path, is just investigating that background. You know, we're really well acquainted with things, and so, but what we tend to ignore is silence, or nothing, or emptiness, or stillness. We just focus on the things. And what I would say is that, so the first step is just noticing that that's there and becoming acquainted with it. But also noticing that the something and the nothing are related. In other words, they're two sides of the same happening. Without one, you don't get the other. So they're not two separate things. And this pertains to this question of vacillating between the sensation of oneness, or the knowledge of oneness, and being lost in everyday life. It's the same. This is the same duality as if you were saying, well, I'm vacillating between hearing sounds and perceiving silence. But the sounds and the silence go together. And the life and the death go together. The something and the nothing go together. You know, this is what's pointed out in the Heart Sutra. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form is not other than emptiness, emptiness is not other than form. They're the same. So jumping from one to another is just another type of movement, just another type of thought or sound, and so on.
So if anyone has a question, or you want to follow up for something Matthew says, again, please intrude.
I'm gonna intrude really briefly to say that I found for some reason, a lot of resistance to engage in the exercise this time around. The one I did the most is the sound exercise. And I've noticed when I do that, because I've been sometimes practice with sound, it's hard also because I have a strong ringing in my ears all the time. So I hear that too. But what I notice sometimes when I do it, just focuses on the sound, is that there's a moment in which it's kind of like I become transparent and I no longer know. I couldn't connect with the silence behind the sound, right? But I no longer know if this sound is inside or outside. Because it's like I become like made of air, just a metaphor. And then that's the thing that I noticed with that particular exercise.
That's great. Keep doing that exercise, because I mean, this is one of the pieces of advice I once gave to a group of people. This was in the context of martial arts, but it works exactly the same in meditation, and that is, make yourself invisible to yourself. In other words, disappear from your own vision. And it's kind of like exactly what you just described. When you do this, the distinction between what's inside and outside disappears. There's just phenomena appearing, and you can no longer determine whether that's inside or outside.
I have experienced that, and I remember now something I forgot that I hear someone saying many years ago. He used to invite people to focus on the sound with no expectation, no labeling, just listen and sit down and listen like a meditation. And he said something that I think is true. He said, sound can take you to inner silence.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's the other point that I want to make, is that that background, the silence, the stillness, the emptiness, it's always there. The sounds come and go, the visual field changes, thoughts come and go, movement comes and goes, but the silence, I say silence metaphorically to stand in for all emptiness, stillness, even love, really. And that is always ever present in the background. And you can just check it out. It literally, every day of your life, you can take a moment, stop, and listen to that, and just check in with that silence. Yep, it's still there. Yep, it's still there. You will never be disappointed. Whenever you look for it, it will be there, unless you're overwhelmed with thoughts or with sound or with yourself. Then you lose sight of it. But the more and more you check in with it, the more and more you start to I don't want to say become convinced, because I'm not really talking about like convincing you intellectually, but whatever it is that you are or think you are will become more and more assured that that silence is ever present, and then everything else comes and goes. And so if everything else comes and goes, including all the various things you take yourself to be, your thoughts, your memories, your sensations, your image in the mirror, your name, all these various things, if all of that comes and goes, which it does, at the very least, it comes and goes with deep sleep, then you can start to have a different experience, a different outlook about what is real and what is not real. You know, who was talking about how, Teddy, I think you were talking about how nice it was to go to bed at night. You know? Why? Silence. How wonderful. All the thoughts can drop away, all the troubles drop away, the world falls away. What doesn't fall away? That's silence. In fact, you fall into deep sleep. You have the most direct experience of that silence.
Teddy.
Yeah, I remember, before years ago, spending time in meditation and doing Vipassana, being kind of afraid of silence, like afraid of where my mind would go, what kind of a hard time it would give me, what I would have to face, and definitely had a journey with that, and still have my own journey on different days, different times. But I think I use the word friend because I really feel like silence, when I can drop into meditation, that's where I can drop into a different sense of stillness, and it's become a friend that I enjoy connecting with. And yeah, what else I was going to say now? I guess just present to the juxtaposition of what I know what I was going to say, of what I was afraid of it before and how I do welcome it, like when I go to sleep or I choose to meditate. And again, this is hard to put into words, but I think I feel like there's so much life in silence when we really give it a chance, and that's hard to get one's arms and head around. But I try to let myself remember that we're the ones that insert the noise. What's around us the weather inserts the noise, people insert the noise, machines insert the noise, but that the real life is alive in the silence. And that's just something that really hit me some years ago and still with me.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, really, everything appears in that silence. That's where everything appears. The Hindu mystic Ananda Moyama said, "Look to nothing; where nothing is, there is everything." So everything comes out of the background of everything is silence, in other words, and the silence and the everything are not separate. That's and I would say the first step on this path is one, finding that silence, and two, making friends with it. Those are fundamental to the path, is making friends with that silence, becoming comfortable with nothing, not relying on things. And then bit by bit seeing that friend is always there. Yeah. It's always present. This may seem a bit off topic, but I want to bring it up because Liz mentioned Advent. Is that right? Yeah. So the season of waiting. What are we waiting for? Well, waiting, I mean, chronologically, historically, or the way the the Christian calendar is set up. We're waiting for Christmas, for the birth of the Lord, right? And what is that? You know, I've been thinking about this lately, partly because it is Advent and Christmas is coming up. And when I was a Catholic, I thought, well, Christmas isn't that interesting. It's Easter, that's what's interesting. But I've been thinking about Christmas because it's the Christmas season. And what is it about? It's about God being in the world. You know, Christmas, if you strip it away, it's about God being coming into the world. And so it's about the imminence of God's presence, that God is with us here and now. And it's not, I would say, something that happens in time or in history. It's a timeless, it's metaphorical, mythical. This birth of the Lord is God's presence in the world. And so God's presence in the world is this silence, is this ever-present stillness, this ever-present emptiness, this all-encompassing peace that is always there if one looks for it. So in a way, we don't have to wait. You know, we have Christmas. It's Christmas every day, you know. So, and then, ultimately I would say, okay, you find this silence, you make friends with it, you return to it again and again and again. But that's not the end of the spiritual path, or the goal of the spiritual path is just to remain always in silence. Is to realize that the silence and the activity are themselves one. That, that form is emptiness and emptiness is form, and so on. That Christ is not only among us, but within you, always. And again, metaphorically, this is what all the teachings are pointing toward.
So Matthew, you advise us to look at what is always present, what is unchanging, which is that silence, that stillness, that peace, that love. And I like it that you say that it's not separate from all the action and movement and appearances. The last question you asked me to put into the final email reminding people is something like this. And finally, can we transfer our identity from what comes and goes, ourself, to what is eternal and always present? Could you say something about what we identify with?
Yeah. So this is, if we're talking about these steps, like, okay, notice this silence, notice emptiness, experience that, then become familiar with it, become friends with it, then start to question what is ever present and what is transient. All the things that we take to be what we are, what's important, the world, and so on, are all transient. It is this ever-present stillness that is permanent, that is real. Everything else is fleeting in our awareness. And so, if I were pressed to say, where does this path lead? It is a transference of one's identity away from transient phenomena and into this ever-present reality.
Thank you. But you said the silence and the activity are one. Is the activity like our thoughts? Is the activity like?
Yeah. Anything you can think of is the activity.
So that means that they're like together, right? Or that's
Yes, yeah. That's what, this idea that it's here now. God's presence, or the ultimate truth, the ultimate reality is right here. It's, we often, or at least I did when I was young, you think like, oh, it's somewhere far off. It's in another, it's beyond this reality. That's the idea of transcendence. It's beyond here. It's far off somewhere. But the idea of immanence is that it's actually, it's everywhere. It's inescapable. It's not just beyond. It's here. And so this is why, in Zen they have this idea of the gateless gate. Okay, so when you look at how do I reach that reality, it appears like a formidable barrier, and that I have to get beyond this barrier, and then it will be over there on the other side. But when you go over to the other side, when you go beyond that, when you transcend, you realize, you turn around, and that gate that you thought was a formidable barrier doesn't exist. It was imagined. It was purely imaginary. And so then you realize that what you thought was just beyond that barrier is actually ever present. It's always been there. You've never been apart from it. You were never even the smallest distance away from it. And so then you realize, like I said earlier, like Anandamayi said, where nothing is, there is everything. That everything and nothing are the same. That you can't pull them apart. We talk about oneness, and I would say rightly so. I think this is the whole point of the spiritual path, is realization of oneness. But this oneness is radical, quite radical. Because what does it mean? It means there's nothing but that. If there's nothing but that, you can't say there's oneness and something else. There's oneness and duality. If there's oneness, that's all there is. Everything else is imagined, including delusion, including the spiritual teachings are extremely radical. So all the the teachings that we receive, like going beyond and so on and so forth, it only makes sense from the way that we imagine it when we're haven't realized that oneness completely, fully. Because if you do, then it's inescapable. There's nothing you can do that would take you outside of it. No, nor have you ever been outside of it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what is outside of that, Matthew?
Yeah.
Matthew, there's a concept of falling from grace.
Yeah.
Is it possible to fall from grace?
Only in the imagination.
Only in the imagination.
So yes, in a manner of speaking, it is. We've all done it. We've all forgotten where we came from. We all forgotten this primordial oneness. We've all forgotten the omnipresence of the Lord. That's falling from grace. Is that forgetting that imagining you are separate from God is falling from grace. Imagining that you are not in reality the supreme truth, the supreme reality, that you're separate from that, a separate being, and so on. That's falling from, or as you know, what did the Upanishad say? This is exactly what it says in the Upanishads. It says, so long as a man believes himself to be separate from the whole, from oneness, right, he is helpless. That's falling from grace. When he identifies himself with it, he transcends all weakness and partakes of its omnipotent qualities. But you got to give yourself up. You got to make yourself invisible to yourself. Otherwise, you're just perpetuating that believing oneself to be separate from the whole. Yeah, Teddy. Yeah.
I'm just really with both the power and the simplicity and power of the phrase come and go. Like you were saying, our thoughts come and go, movements, sensations. Yeah, you could name them. And something that's hitting me around oneness is that sort of that trying to touch that concept that we each are going to come. We're here now. We came and we're going to go. At some point we're going to transition. We're going to die. I guess I feel like I'm touching something in this moment around that concept of coming and going as oneness with everything.
Yeah. Everything comes and goes in that oneness. It's not even that we're going to go when we die. We're going each moment. Every moment is a new moment. You like tonight when you go to sleep, you're going to go. Or at least this waking self that we imagine ourselves to be is going to vanish, dissolve into sleep, into deep sleep. And so if this just this phrase "come and go" is touching a nerve, I really encourage you to meditate on just that, coming and going of various things. Take that to be your practice, the focus of your inquiry. It doesn't take much, there's such a tendency or a compulsion to try and make this complicated, but it's not. It's actually, the difficulty lies in its utter simplicity, not in its complexity. So so I often say, like I've been saying lately, my new phrase that I like is that simple instructions make for profound practice. If you make your practice overly complex or your inquiry overly complex, you will lose yourself in those complexities. Make it as simple as possible. So if coming and going, just this idea of things coming and going, go into that more and more and more.
I'll just share one other thing since Bruce put in a plug for the Qigong. That Qigong is about paying attention to energy, the energy inside of us as well as the energy outside of us. So I'm definitely going to take this on, Matthew, because it's the practice is about paying attention not only through the movement but to the sensation it's about cleansing our own chi, our own energy. I'll just say it's a self-healing practice. But within that practice, there's that opportunity to notice stuck energy and find a way to dissolve it through the movement, through our breath. And anyway, it is really simple and profound, the coming and going, and being able to pay attention even more so with that to energy and sensation.
Yeah, yeah. Another way to meditate on coming and going is to consider the ever-changing nature of things. One thing turns into another thing, turns into another thing, turns into another thing. Like, even if you sit in still, if you pay attention to your sensations, they're constantly moving. There's so much movement going on, constant movement. And within that movement is, stillness. Yeah, just like the sound, and silence, and so on.
Anyone else have final thoughts, questions, or comments? Matthew, any final conclusive words of wisdom for us?
I want to just revisit what Mark was saying about magnetism or reflectivity, is because I think this speaks directly to the purpose of practice. You can't transform yourself, but you can engage in practice that quiets the mind and so on, and that's actually all you need to do. Because that, for example, you can't create silence. I think somebody already said that, in fact, during the discussion. You can't make it happen. You can't create it. All you can do is quiet yourself, and then silence presents itself. It's assured, because the idea that you are separate from that silence is itself just an idea. So as soon as you quiet yourself, it will appear.
I'd like to add a thing to that, if I might. Is that distracting you? Or...
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I was probably a couple years ago, I was doing Qigong in the backyard, and I was trying to do less, less, right? There I was trying really hard to do less. Right next to me, I wish I remember the name of the flowers, but they're these beautiful flowers that are sort of like bells that they hang down like this. What are they called? Calla lilies, maybe? They're white, and they're there, just being there. And I looked over at them, and I'm like, I just realized that they're doing the exact thing I've been trying to do. They're just doing it. I'm like, thank you. I'm saying that because it is quieting the mind, but also sometimes, the world will come in and go, doofus, here, we're right here. And I was completely taken by that moment when it happened.
That's a great story. Yeah. Teachers everywhere.
Nature is a great teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to conclude for us, unless I'm going to give one more chance for people to say something.
Thank you, everybody.
So, Matthew and everyone who spoke, thank you. There were just beautiful comments. May we take these comments as guidance on our practice and our path. And may this discussion return us to silence. May we overcome the inner and outer noise of this world. May we find peace and stillness in the hustle and bustle and in the turmoil that we see so much in this world right now. May we find peace and stillness and silence. And may we go deeper, and may we find that presence, that pure presence, that oneness, that isness, that thisness. And may in this time of Advent, may we find God in everything. May we find peace and oneness in everything. And may we share that with others in kindness and love and support. And may we accept it from others, their kindness, their help, and their support. And may through that, this world become a better place.
Amen. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, everyone. It's great seeing everybody. Hope you have
Happy seasons to everyone.
lovely holiday season.
Thank
and New
you
Year.
all. Happy
Thank you,
holidays.
Holidays.
Thank you.
Savor the dark.
Thank you all. Good to see you all again.
Yeah.